It's beer o'clock on Real Ale Craft Beer. I've heard a little bit about cold IPA. It's a new thing. I don't know too much about it, to be honest with you. I know New England IPAs. I used to know Brute IPAs because they were a thing once upon a time. But cold IPA. Now, cold IPA, especially from a company like Anheuser-Busch, these are definitely Anheuser-Busch, InBev, Camden Town Brewery, their chili cold IPA. And if you have a look at the tongue there, it's throwing ice cubes out the tongue. Now, for me, what I initially thought, and my initial thought was, okay, they brewed an IPA which you're going to have freezing cold. It's not the case. It's not the case. I've had a brief look at the back of the can, and they've used like flake rice. They've fermented it at a warmer temperature, and they've added wheat for the haze and mouthfeel, and New World hops for big fruity flavour. So the difference then for me with this IPA is that they've used lager yeast, they fermented it at a warmer temperature, they've used flake rice, wheat, and New World hops. I kind of get it. Now, they say to serve this between 5 and 7 degrees. Now, my conservatory is about that this time of year. So let's get the beer out into a glass and see what we get. It's the malts. Oh, they've got that messed up. Oh, they've made a typo on the side of the can. I'll show you in a moment. Right, this beer is £3. £3 in Sainsbury's. I went out to Sainsbury's today. Somebody in the comments box on one of my videos said there's a brand new few new beers out in Sainsbury's. Go and check them out. So Sunday, yeah, had a bit of breakfast. Bit wet, bit horrible, bit winter-like. Let's get out there. Let's get out to Sainsbury's. So I had a bit of a drive today. We got a 1 to 2 finger white head. It is indeed hazy, straw-coloured. God, the fruit flies are loving it. Get away. Nice levels of carbonation, yeah, nice and hazy. Let's get the aroma. It smells a little bit like a Brute IPA. It smells slightly like a Brute IPA, to be honest with you. It's that kind of dryness, that clinical dryness of a Brute IPA. But slightly better. The fruit flies are going mad for this. I mean, it's November. They shouldn't really be around, should they, this time of year? That is really tropical, really juicy. Loads of orange, loads of tangerine. And then a slight kind of dryness on the aroma. I know you can't smell dry, but it's given off for me. When you taste beers that are dry, oh my goodness me, I've never been so put off by a fruit fly in my life. It's like kamikaze. Right, I'm going to dive in. Cheers, everybody. So a big hiss and fizz of carbonation on the palate. I nearly had that fruit fly. It's like that Breaking Bad episode, isn't it? Where they had a fly in the, where they were making, well, it looked like a brewery to me. Quite aggressively carbonated. It's quite like you hold the beer in the mouth and it's really kind of like hissing and fizzing in there in the mouth. It's quite prominent though. There's a big flavour of orange and tangerine and spiciness and pepperiness. Loads of orange, loads of tangerine. Really drinkable for 6% ABV. A really big drinkable beer. But I would say maybe a little bit too carbonated. Maybe they need to lower the carbonation down a little bit. It's a bit bonkers. It's a bit wild. It's a bit kind of, well, you can hear it. It's got me burping. And they need to calm the carbonation down a little bit. It's a bit too aggressive. Maybe this is the evolvement of Brut IPA. Maybe this is you can definitely get the clinicalness of the lager yeast. It's a very kind of dry, spicy, peppery flavour. You get that clinical kind of rice as well. It's really clinical. It's a little bit of sweet malt, then it's over to bitterness on the back end. It's got nice drinkability to it. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's new. It's my first cold IPA. Do I like it? Do I think it's got a future? I think so. It needs tweaking. This particular one from Camden needs tweaking. They need to bring the carbonation levels down just a little bit. It's a little bit too carbonated. If you bought this on this run, they might get it right next time. But they've kind of made a big typo on the side of the can. Have a look at this. If it focuses. If it doesn't, then I do apologise. So they've got malt, Mosaic, Cryo, Talus and Chinook. They're hops. And they've got hops, Pilsner, flake rice and wheat, and that's the malt. They've got the yeast right. It's their house lager yeast at Camden Town. But a bit of a doo-doo there with that can. Somebody's had a bit of a typo. Never mind, these things happen. I think if somebody from the general public picked this up, they're not going to know the difference, really. It's just as craft beer people, really, they're going to go, yeah, that's all wrong. Fancy a cold one, who doesn't? But the cold in this IPA isn't serving temperature. 5 to 7 degrees if you're asking. That's about right for IPA. It's a new hybrid style brewed with lager yeast but at a warmer temperature. Flaked rice for crispy boy refreshingness. Wheat for haze and mouthfeel. And New World hops for big fruity flavour. Ingredients are water, malted barley, malted wheat, rice, hops and yeast. Will it be the next big thing? It kind of scared me a little bit because I grew up in the 1990s. The late 1990s was my era when I started to venture out into the pubs. And then when I ventured out into the pubs at that age, it was all about kind of frozen lager. So you'd go to the pub and you'd see Foster's Ice. You'd see Carling Ice Cold. And then the bitters started to do it. So you'd have Brains Extra Cold, Brains Bitter Extra Cold, and you'd have John Smith's Cold. So a lot of them were started doing this kind of cold, freezing cold beers. And my worry was that this cold IPA with the ice cubes coming out the mouth there, I was thinking, oh my goodness me, it's going to be one of those freezing beers. But thankfully it's not. It's a new style of IPA. Does it work for me? It's quite nice. It does remind me of Brut IPA a little bit. That kind of clinicalness about it. That dryness. It never really worked, Brut IPA. Everybody was saying, yeah, Brut IPA is the next big thing, and it never really worked, but people really wanted it to work. They were over pushing it. Will this happen? Will this be the next big thing? I don't know. It's different. It's definitely different. What I would say is it makes the hops much more pronounced. The hops are really kind of singing on the palate. There's loads of tangerine and grapefruit and orange peel. It's quite nice for the hops. I like it. Camden Chili Cold IPA. I kind of like it. I think with a little bit of tweakiness, with getting that carbonation level down a little bit, it could be a pretty decent beer. I like that enough to give it an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 from Real Ale Craft Beer. Please put your comments in the comments box. Subscribe to our daily beer and food reviews. Give us a big fat thumbs up. Boom. Cheers.